Talk Show.
Recorded live.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Travis and Vic's Drunken Horror Adventures, recording at 3 p.m. on a Sunday. Not exactly our usual time. We will post this, of course, on, travandvichorror.wordpress.com and have it uploaded to Spreaker. But we had the opportunity to talk to someone about the Starved Rock murders today, who will be calling in about 5 minutes' time. And we wanted to revisit Starved Rock, to be honest with you. There's just so many things to talk about with this story. It's such an interesting story that I would be remiss if I did not, do this show and revisit Starved Rock. If you recall, on, July 11th, we actually spoke to the history cop, Ray Johnson, who was prepping for a little viewing party of the American Ripper show that debuted that night. And, of course, he was on there talking about H.H. Holmes and possible connections to Jack the Ripper. Spoiler warning, he does not feel it's connected. However, our dear friend Jeff Mudgett does. So go back and watch that. But, excuse me while I took a drink. I'm drinking Gumption today. Woodchuck hard cider. You guys know I like that. So, and here in about hour and a half, going to get some margaritas. It's going to be a good night. But anyway, and when we had Ray on here, we talked about how on March 14th, 1960, you had three women from Riverside who ventured out to Starved Rock State Park for a few days of rest and recreation, relaxation, whatever you want to call it. They stayed at the park's lodge. They checked into their rooms, and then they ate lunch at the inn's dining room. And then they hiked a few wooded miles across the snowy trails into St. Louis Canyon. Of course, most of this information is coming from Steve Stout, another friend of ours who wrote the Starved Rock murders in 1982. So it's been that long. Of course, the killings took place on March 14, 1960. So 22 years following that, the book comes out. Well, anyway, 2 days later, after they go out on this hike, these three women were found beaten to death in a cold canyon crime that literally sent shockwaves across the Illinois Valley. And ultimately, it changed the way Illinois State Police investigated crimes. You had this massive investigation that lasted for months. And then about 8 months after the investigation started, a young dishwasher at the lodge where these women were staying, Chester Otto Wigger of Oglesby, was eventually charged and convicted in the case. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he still remains today. He is, I believe, 77 years old, or maybe I'm thinking of George Romero, but he's up there regardless. He's in his 70s now, and he's the second longest tenured inmate, so in Illinois. A lot of people don't like to talk about the Starved Rock murders because Starved Rock's a very popular, park out in Illinois. In fact, from what I understand, it's the only one that turns a profit in Illinois, so it actually helps pay for the other parks there. It was a tragedy, absolutely, but there's still mystery surrounding the whole thing. I mean, there's still people to this day that either feel like, A, Chester Wigger was innocent, or B, that he didn't work alone, and Ray Johnson was actually among them. And Ray Johnson's a pretty schooled guy as far as crimes go, and he kind of talked about how in situations like this where an accomplice does not, or where somebody does not roll over on their accomplice, is that it's usually a family member. They take the fall. In fact, he's seen people take the fall for people who didn't actually do anything. So, in their own family, just to, save them from what happened. So, it's an interesting story because one of the interesting things about it was the fact that Chester Wigger is actually smaller than all three of these women, and he used a broken tree branch in order to kill them. Here in just a second, we are going to have our buddy on. I hear him, I see him, and he'll be on. He's getting through the login process. Hunter James Cox is calling in, and we'll be here now. What's up, Hunter? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Travis? How you doing, man?
I am surviving. It's just another day in paradise. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I understand you're in L.A. right now. Is that right?
That's correct. And I'm assuming you're probably drinking too, yeah?
Hey, how did you know? How did you know? I picked up a drink for the show.
I've been watching a few of your podcasts, man, and every time you guys are always mentioning it.
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
what we do. That's what we do.
Sweet.
But you know what? These true crime ones, we try to take them really seriously. I mean, because it is a serious topic. I mean, don't get me wrong. We
right.
kick things around a little bit, and your documentary was really serious. And I have to be honest with you.
Right.
In order to prepare for the first podcast I did on the Starved Rock murders, I probably watched your podcast or your documentary about 10 times. I mean, it was full of valuable information. And of course, Steve Stack was part of that too. But I guess I should start from square one. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? You know, kind of introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, no problem. I actually work as a director. I went to school in Chicago, Columbia College, Chicago. Moved out to LA about 3 years ago. And I've been just kind of working on different scripted TV shows, feature films, commercials here and there, and kind of writing and directing my own material on the side. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
So you're originally from Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of people know me from this this thing that happened in high school where I was the Bulldog mascot, and the news media got footage that I had put together with me as the mascot. And the school kind of dismissed me and all that, but it kind of just got overblown with the social media and everything, and that's kind of what compelled me to go into filmmaking. So, yeah. And that was it.
Makes sense. Okay, so for a guy from Chicago, you know,
yeah.
You've got these murders that took place March 14th, 1960, and
exactly.
I have to be honest with you, outside of that area, and maybe not even in that area, it's not well known. I mean, like Ray Johnson, he's called the history cop in Chicago. He told me that he hadn't even heard of it until up to like 5 years ago. And that's crazy because from the research that I did and the things that I found out, it was like the OJ case of its time in 1960.
Exactly.
How do you come across this?
Okay, well, I was in my sophomore year of college, and my parents, I knew that I had to do a documentary. It was just school curriculum and whatnot. And I thought, okay, well, I need to have a story. And my parents, we went out to Illuminati's in Chicago the night before I went out to school. And they said, have you heard about the Starved Rock murders? And that's how it all came about. After that, I did some research, found Steve Stout on Facebook, I think, contacted him, asked if he would like to interview with me. And then after that, it just kind of, I figured out from there, it was just a small-scale operation at that point. And I found out that I needed to expand the project into this feature that you are now seeing online. And I'm still continuing to work on it, actually, because, I mean, it's never ending. There's always somebody that's got something that I need to incorporate into the film itself. So that's how the initial idea came about.
Well, it's interesting because Chicago is I mean, it's a wealth of true crime. You're talking about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. You're talking about Gacy. You're talking about, let's see, we could go on and on, but, H.H. Holmes. Why this one in particular? What about this one? Was it the mystery surrounding it, or what exactly, drew you to this one in particular as opposed to one of those other well-known ones?
It's a lot like what your podcast spoke about in other episodes. They were, it had an effect on the entire community and the nation. It changed the way the judicial system actually works in terms of like different laws, like the electrocution and all that. Things of this case had a dramatic effect across the nation. And it's funny you say Chicago, because when I was interviewing Steve Stout, he goes, the reason why his friends in Chicago said, they said to him, the reason why we don't go to Starved Rock is because you had murders there. And he said, well, the reason why I don't go to Chicago is because you had fire, and it's
and a lot more murders. And every day there's a murder in Chicago.
Exactly. Did you guys see on 4th of July how many killings we had? Like, it was all over the news. Man, it's just crazy.
Not that I'm proud of it, but we're trying to catch up here in Louisville. There's like a shooting every day here. So, I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on in this world. If I'm not mistaken, Trump sent about 1,500 troops just to Chicago alone to decrease the crime rate that's happening. It's just insane. Mm-hmm. So,
But yeah, man. But yeah, it did have an effect on the entire community. I know that my parents and other people around there were scared to go to the park, or they had heard. I guess my parents were born in 1962, so it was after the case, and I was born in 1991, so I know I'm coming into this very late in the game too. And I think Steve Stout actually wrote the book 20 years after Chester was actually convicted. But yeah, so I mean, everybody's playing catch up, trying to figure out what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
And I think go on.
Oh, I was going to say, Steve Stout was a perfect, place to start with the whole thing. I mean, I think out of anybody, he knows more about the case than anybody. Aside from the, Cherry Mine disaster, these are the two things that he's an absolute expert about. And if you put it in the time,
absolutely,
in the research that he did, I mean, you're talking to, once he goes, like one day when he passes away, there's not going to be a lot of people left with this type of knowledge of what happened because record keeping is just not that great,
Yeah. What was it? I only had to ask him, like, if I asked Steve one question, he was just off and going. Man, he just laid everything out for me. It was pretty nice. But yeah, I don't know what you want me to talk about in terms of like my journey, in terms of the filmmaking process, but let's
start with your journey. Let's start with your journey through the whole thing.
Okay.
Did you go visit Starved Rock, and then that's where you met Steve Stout, or did you give him a call? I know he's got some info online for people. Oh, wait, the Facebook thing, but did you actually visit Starved Rock first?
Yeah, so I had been to Starved Rock many a time, so probably I'd say on average twice a year, especially during the fall season. In fact, I think now they've had to extend the parking lot, and they have a shuttle that goes from outside Starved Rock to take people into the park because it's become such a plentiful location during the fall season. It's crazy. And what else was there that I saw? I just went not too long ago, actually. The book that Steve wrote, it's funny because before this year, I've always seen that book in the gift shop. And then this year I went in, whether it was sold out or not, I don't know, but I couldn't find anything that Steve had written in the shop, especially the murders. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's sold out, but they may be trying to, cover up the past, because a lot of people don't know about the murders. If you go around, you ask anyone in the park, they don't know they existed. A few of the employees that I interviewed there, yeah, they know about it. They've been there for about 14 or 15 years. Eventually word gets around, but it feels like it's all been, thrown under the rug a little bit.
Yeah, whenever I talked to Ray Johnson, he was talking about that, when he was there, he was watching these little kids play in the exact spot where the bodies were found. And it was just eerie to see, and obviously he didn't clue them into where they're playing. But,
right.
I could see that viewpoint, where they don't want to kill the tourist attraction, but on the other hand, I got to kind of think like there's if you talk about the Civil War, nobody thinks that, you don't bat an eye. People died in those places too, and people still want to visit it. So
exactly.
It's just an odd thing that, where you can't really promote it so much, but I don't know about covering it up. That just seems like a strange thing to do.
Right. Well, I mean, it's kind of, what was I thinking about Ray, what Ray said? He said, I don't remember what he said. That was something I was thinking about. But, overall, though, the park itself, I mean, you got 19 canyons there. There's canoeing. There's biking. You can go cross-country skiing during the winter. When the falls freeze over, you can go ice climb up the falls themselves. I've seen people do that. It's just a remarkable place. A lot of weddings are hosted there. Their lodge. I think it was built during the 1930s. They got that overlook place for everything of that nature. The food's there is amazing. It's just overall an amazing place. But who would have thought it just had this tragic history attached to it? So that's kind of what attracted me to the project, really. The contrast between the two.
about 10 days ago, some hiker, I think some girl actually fell like 20 feet there.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of looking through Twitter for Starved